Muslim background believers were tortured. And I think for Christian background believers, the government would make their lives really hard. But yeah, especially we know one Muslim background believer who was tortured really badly and was in prison several times. And Christian background believers who had to go several times to the security police, and they would ask many questions and visit them in churches and would pretend they are Christians to find out more information. So persecution was real.
And I think for us it was encouraging and also challenging at the same time to see these local brothers and sisters who are willing to take risks because they knew Jesus is worth it.
Hi folks, welcome back to Raw Mission. If you're joining us for the first time, we hope you'll be encouraged and challenged and inspired to action. In this podcast, we want to take you to villages, towns and cities around the world, where finding a follower of Jesus is like finding a needle in a haystack. In fact, where there are often no believers, no churches and no gospel workers. But we want to show you what God is up to, how his kingdom is expanding and growing, even in the most unlikely places. I'm Matt, your host, and today I've got Daniel and Maria with me, who after just 9 months on the field in East Africa, experienced an outbreak of civil war. Their evacuation story sounds like something you'd see in a movie, but it's very real, with about 100 cars containing around 2,000 people in one big convoy. This young couple with their small child desperately try to flee the city and get to safety, and they have no option but to trust the Lord for his guidance and protection. Well, it's a joy to have Daniel and Maria on the show. Welcome, guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
These days, you're living in the Middle East. Have you settled there for now, or are you in transition on the way somewhere else in the future?
Yeah, we came here after we had to flee from our country where we lived to study the language of our country. And we want to move back to Africa, East Africa, end of this year.
Okay, great. And we won't talk too much about exact places and exact timelines. But anyway, it's great to have you on the show. And it'd be really good to start with some of your background. So Maria, tell us roughly where you grew up, and were you from a Christian home? Were you always as a kid even interested in crossing cultures and missions and things like that?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian home, and actually very early I started to read books about people living in different cultures, like people living on the field. And I was very interested in cultures and just in general really had this desire to also, when I'm grown up, to move abroad and help others. So this was, as I can remember, always a topic. But then I had a time in my teenage years where I wasn't with God at all. So it, of course, wasn't the focus anymore. But when I came back to know Jesus and to really follow him and to really also ask for his will for my life, it was pretty clear very fast that one day I would live outside Europe. So yeah, it was always part of my life.
And did you get the chance to travel much with your family or on some short-term mission trips?
With my family, we just mainly traveled in Europe and we went for beach vacations and stuff.
Yeah.
But later on, when I went to the Bible school, I was able to do some short-term trips to unreached people groups. And this is where my desire grew to go where people don't know who Jesus is.
And what about Muslims? Did you grow up knowing Muslims at school in the country where you were, or when you started doing some little trips to unreached people groups, were you already interested in Muslims?
Not at all. I was always thinking that I might go to Asia, Buddhist countries or Hindu countries. And I, of course, knew some Muslims in school as well, but I think I was a little bit maybe afraid, and I think I'm not the only one with this problem in Europe. So I was not very interested, to be honest.
Yeah. So how did that first start for you? How did you get that sort of interest in Muslims? Was it because you met Daniel later and he already had that, or were you on your own journey?
No, it was on my own journey. When I did some research about unreached people groups, it was pretty clear that many unreached people groups are Muslims. and that there is a big need, and there's many countries and people groups with no believers, and who is willing to go there. And God really changed my heart, especially for Muslims.
Great. Daniel, tell us some of your background.
Yes, I was raised in a Christian home, and my father used to tell us each day devotional from a famous evangelist and missionary in Africa. So, yeah, I saw the pictures in that devotional, and I had in my heart to go there one day and serve the African people. So, when I was in school, I always had in my mind, I will go to Africa when I'm out of school. So, after my 12th grade, I went to West Africa for a year. And yeah, it was a tough year, a really hard year. And I laid everything in front of God and told him, if he really wants me to be in Africa, I need to have more preparation. Yeah. So in the end, I told God, what was my motivation in going to Africa? Is it just because it sounds crazy and just like the hard guys can go there? I said to God, I'm ready to go to East Europe as well. If you want me to be there, I'm ready. But then I joined the Bible school, which Maria mentioned before. And within some weeks, God told me again that, no, this is the plan He has for me to go to Africa and serve the people there. And every year we did a short-term outreach. And for the first time in my life, I saw unreached people groups. And in the end, we did also a 10 weeks internship in East Africa. And this is where I would say I got in contact also with Muslims for the first time. And I felt called to serve, especially in that country.
Okay. Going back to that 1 year you did in West Africa, maybe you can tell us which country. It sounds like it wasn't with Muslims in West Africa, but what were some of the hardest things about that 1 year? Because you were young and that's your first experience. That's usually when the shocks happen, the culture shock and all those things.
Yes, I was in Ghana and I worked mainly amongst Christian. I was in an orphanage home living with the orphans together. And I was kind of on my own there. I didn't have good Christian fellowship, and I went to a church, but I saw, a lot of heresy or teaching which wasn't according to the Bible. So in the end, I was a bit disappointed and everything was new. So I was 18 years old and I had culture shock and didn't have good mentors alongside me. But in the end, I reflected this year and I could say it was still really helpful to grow in my personality.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure there were lots of challenges, even simple living and all of that. But yeah, if you're isolated on your own, that probably helped you realize in the future, like now, I must be part of team, and that's, of course, one of the things Frontiers is good at is we believe in teams. We want everyone to be on a team because we've all either learned from experience or from someone else's experience that's so important. Maria, tell us what happened next. I mean, tell us how you met this guy at Bible college and was he thinking and talking about Africa? How did that work? How did your kind of visions come together?
So the nice thing when I look back is when I first went to Bible school, I was 17 years old and it's more than 10 years ago. And I did 2 years out of 3. And then I went back to my home country and had 6 years of studying. I was doing an apprenticeship and stuff. And then I really felt that I should go back to Bible school for the 3rd year. So I decided to go back. And then I met Daniel and he was also in the 3rd year. And he was doing 3 years in a row. And we were sitting next to each other and we started to be good friends. And somehow God made a way for both of us to go to East Africa for our internship. And by this time, we weren't even in a relationship. But I really felt that he is the one from God. And it was also like a miracle that everyone allowed us to go on an internship together without being married and not the like same sex and stuff. So I really felt that this was from God, but I think Daniel needed some more time on the field to realize that I'm the one.
Well, I mean, often we guys are a bit slower to pick things up.
Right.
Yeah. But then we really found out that it would be a good match for us to be together, but also to be there on the field and to really feel that this is the place where God wants us to serve among these people and in this region. And it was very exciting. So we were like, yes, this is it. We need to get married and for Daniel to do some studies as well. And then we are ready to come back here. And this was exciting, and we really felt strongly that this is the place God made us for.
Well, how did you find Frontiers and a team and all of that process?
I was still single and I went to a weekend with Frontiers. And yeah, it was especially for youth. Yeah, a great weekend camping together. And this was my first contact with them.
I think I heard about those weekends. Is it where you're only allowed to eat jam sandwiches, and if you want to eat meat, you have to catch chicken or something?
Right, we just ate bread and jam, especially in the morning.
Preparation.
Yeah, but then I think 2 or 3 years passed and I reconnected with them. And also due to our country where we wanted to serve, because we felt like Frontiers have the best preparation course. And because we ended up in a Muslim country, we knew, okay, Frontiers might be the best organization in that specific country.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. So did, I guess, the guys there in your home country, the Frontiers office there, looked around, found some teams in the country you were thinking about, and you did some kind of introductions, and you went out to join a team, or did you guys become team leaders and start your own team?
Yeah, it was a little bit messy in the beginning because there were some of us and some others who were interested, and it wasn't clear like who will be the team leader, how many teams will it be in the end, will it be just 1 or 2 or whatever. But in the end, we joined a team and we didn't become team leaders, but we know our team leaders from the time even before we joined Frontiers. So there was a connection already, and God really like matched everything together. Yeah, it started crazy and chaotic, but it ended well and nice.
Good. Yeah, it's not easy sometimes trying to find, for some people, the right country or the right people to work amongst. For some people, it's trying to find the right job to do when they go. And for some people, it's just, which is the team that's right for us? So yeah, it's all part of your story. And it's good for our listeners to know. Yeah, it's not always an easy process. Our job is to matchmake and help you find the right team. Yeah, Daniel.
We were together as a team just for 3 months in our country. And then our team leaders had to leave due to sickness. So in the end, we were kind of responsible for a short-termer who was just 19 years old, a young single guy. And yeah, we were together till the war broke out. So then we decided to move to Middle East, where we're kind of an online team. But after, now some more months, we will return to the team again.
It's not the ideal situation because sometimes you join a team and it might feel like the perfect team. We love these people. Everything's going well, but then someone has to leave. And then, now the team is different. Or the leadership is different. And so, that's an important thing also for folks to understand. We hold everything lightly. We try and figure this out, where God wants us to be and what the team will look like. And we build this up in our imagination. And then sometimes the reality is totally different. But it's a good thing to work towards. Yeah. And some people have a very good situation where the team stays together for years with not too much change. And that's a blessing, if possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's imagine now, when you first moved to your country, do you have any kids at that point?
Yes, our son was just born and he was 2 months old when we moved there. And as Daniel said, we've been there only 3 months together as a team.
Okay, so you went out there as a couple with a baby. That's a brave move to go with a baby of 2 months old. Yeah, we did the same when we returned to Pakistan with a 3-month-old, my oldest child. Quite early, but it's possible. And how
It
was
was
it? That's the key question. What was it like arriving in this country? Describe the environment, describe the place you moved to and all the challenges and the interesting things you first experienced.
Yeah, it was great after a long time of preparation to finally end up in the country where our heart was beating for and the people. And it was a lot of excitement. Like we were thinking we will be there for a long time and we will build our lives there and we will build our home there. So we tried to make contacts, to go to the market, get to know people. If we're finding out everything, how does it work here? And how do we bargain with the rickshaw drivers, for example? And lot of new things. How can we manage the heat there and live without air conditioning and power cuts and many new things and challenges you're not even thinking about when you're living in Europe.
Yeah, and we started
Yes.
also directly with language learning, which was quite challenging to find good teachers or nurturers for you. And then we made progress. I think in the beginning, you make a lot of progress with the basic words. So it was encouraging that we could speak in their language. And if we want to buy something and having small talks. But the language lesson itself, for me, it was also challenging as my teacher was always a bit tired and falling asleep. So I had to prepare him some coffee. And then, so we had to find new teachers. And we said the first 2 years we want to invest in language. And then we had some challenges there.
Why was your teacher falling asleep so much, Daniel? Was it because you were boring or he'd been up really late the night before?
Of course, I couldn't speak a lot, but I think he was just tired, always tired. In those cultures, they stay awake maybe till 2, 3 in the night. And then in the morning, it's too early sometimes. But I had another teacher then some weeks later. He was always on his phone. So we really faced some challenges.
Yeah. Maria, what about you and with having a baby?
Yeah, I think with having a baby, you just learn, especially with the first one, you just learn to be a mom and to take care of another person. And then also at the same point to study. And I wanted to make progress. I wanted to go out and meet people, but at the same time, it's not possible sometimes when they are very small and little still. So this was also frustrating for me because I felt like I'm always behind in like getting to know the people and the culture and how does everything work here. I'm always like, everything is more slow with babies and in general, having kids on the field. And this was something I really realized after we moved there.
We were in a country that wasn't so stable. So the visa situation is also an important subject. So we had to find something as a team where we want to get our visas from. So this is why we registered a company and also a language center. So in the end, our goal was also to provide English classes for the people.
Yeah, it's often an important part of arriving. Yeah, what are we going to do here? What visa will we be on? And that can cause lots of insecurity as well. I mean, you're not quite sure what will happen year to year. Good. Okay, so initially there was that mixture of excitement and new team and friendships and learning some language and making some good progress, but then mixed with the challenges of having a young family. Yeah, I understand that. I remember those days in northern Pakistan, and yeah, the electricity's gone and you can't do everything you want to do. What about any local friendships in those days? I mean, it's not easy to make local friends before you've got a good grasp of language, but sometimes there are folks who speak a different language, maybe some English or something else that you speak.
So for me, I was able to make some friends in the apartment we first lived in. And then we moved twice. And still I was able to visit those ladies and felt like they really wanted to introduce me into their culture. And there was always an open door for me. And I was really enjoying that. I was able to eat with them in the morning and drink tea and coffee. And this is possible with a little amount of language. And as my language was growing, also the relationship was growing, and I was even able to pray for some of those women. And this was great. Like, God is always preparing people for us and relationships and opportunities to share and be a light, even with a small amount of language. And this was
Mm.
very encouraging for me.
That's good. And I'm sure it meant a lot for the local people, even just to see you coming and trying to learn the language and living in the apartment with them. That means so much. It communicates so much of God's heart and God's love for them. So it's so surprising, isn't it, often to the locals? Can you describe more about this country that you were in? It sounds like you were in a city. Do they have Christian friends around them, people they would have gone to school with, or is it like 99% Muslim? What was it like?
Yeah, I would say it's above 90% Muslim, but there are churches in that city. And not every city has churches, but in the capital, there are churches. And yeah, people would know maybe some Christians, but there are not that many, and mainly from southern tribes. Yeah, so some tribes are already reached, but there are many, many tribes which are still unreached and where there are no believer in that tribe. But in the capital, you can find people from every tribe and also believers. So yeah, we also had some fellowship with churches and some local believers, which was really encouraging. They went through a lot in the past, persecution, and we could learn a lot from them.
Tell me more about that. What kind of persecution? Why were they being persecuted?
One point is the governmental persecution. There was a time where churches were closed. There would be spies in churches. Things weren't allowed. For example, Christian would go for Jesus marches during Christmas times on the streets. They would openly share about faith and about Jesus, but there were some years where this wasn't allowed. So churches were closed, and we know of the local brothers who were taken captive or tortured as well.
Why were they being tortured? Is it because they were just minorities and the government was scared of Christians or just wanted to keep them down? Or were these guys tortured because they'd come from a Muslim background and turned to faith in Jesus?
Yeah, both. Especially Muslim background believers were tortured. And I think for Christian background believers, the government would make their lives really hard. But yeah, especially we know one Muslim background believer who was tortured really badly and was in prison several times. And Christian background believers who had to go several times to the security police, and they would ask many questions and visit them in churches and would pretend they are Christians to find out more information. So persecution was real.
I'm glad you got to meet them and learn from them, because that is important. If there is a small Christian church in any of the countries we work in, we have to learn from them, don't we, about the culture, about their own experiences, the years that they've spent living there. And it sounds like your particular country has a surveillance state where they're very controlling and watching everyone, I guess more like China or somewhere like that. In Pakistan, where I lived and worked, the government were watching, but they weren't too worried. They quite liked even having some Christian workers doing hospital work and NGO work. But yours sounds like the state was more serious and more involved and didn't really like the Christians much. I guess it's an Islamic government of some form.
Right.
Yes. And I think for us, it was encouraging and also challenging at the same time to see these local brothers and sisters who are willing to take risks because they knew Jesus is worth it. And I think this is the main thing that we learned, that our life with Jesus isn't always happy clappy, and we sometimes need to take risks. And also there is sometimes things we don't like, and there is also suffering, and this is part of it. And to see them like always taking these risks and be willing to share with people who don't know Jesus, even if it means for them to end up in prison or being tortured, just being obedient. And this was very, very encouraging, but also very, very challenging. Are we willing to take the same risks? And yeah, I think this is a big thing. We don't want to suffer and we don't want to experience bad things. And are we willing to do so?
And I remember
Definitely.
one brother said, well, the times when he was interrogated, he felt Jesus most closely to him than ever before. In the time when they would ask him questions, he would feel like Jesus is having his arm around him. And yeah,
Wow.
this was so precious to meet him.
That's really powerful. You've helped us understand a little bit. You're in East Africa, you're in a city, quite a difficult country in terms of state surveillance. What about the local people and how they responded to you as Europeans coming to live in their country? Were they warm towards you? Were they suspicious of you? Were spiritual conversations, as you grew in language, were spiritual conversations easy to get into?
The first time we went to that country, it was like a vision trip. Could we imagine living here? We had a tourist visa and we were also going to touristy places, to the capital, but also to another city. So when people ask, what are you doing here? We said, yeah, we are tourists. We want to see the country. And this is what we did. But they said, this country isn't a good place for tourists. So they were really suspicious. And yeah, maybe didn't welcome us like from the authorities, maybe. But when it comes to the people on the streets, I always told my wife and other people, supporters, that I've never met people like them, so friendly, just open to talk with. Yeah, really precious people. And yeah, we love them.
And also, we felt like it was a lot easier to talk about faith than in Europe, because in Europe, there is only, I feel like, a few believers, or people are just like, they don't want to talk about God at all. It's a private thing. But in the Muslim world, it's very different. Like, it's not a private thing. It's a community thing. And it's normal to talk about God. And people are surprised that Westerners are believers and real believers, not only by name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a nice surprise, isn't it? When they realize, these are people of faith. They pray as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we thought Europeans had given up on prayer, given up on God, and many have. Have you ever thought about your role in God's great mission to draw all people to himself? There are so many ways you could get involved, even if you don't end up overseas. You could share some of these episodes, introduce Raw Mission to your friends, and give us a 5-star rating or write us a review. You could become a regular partner too in this ministry, perhaps by giving £10 or £20 a month, enabling us to keep growing our team here and sending more labourers to the harvest. Or even join our team in the UK. We're often on the lookout for new staff, advocates and mobilisers around the country, or those of you with finance and administration gifts. Please do pause for a moment and ask the Lord what you could do, and then we'll get back to the interview. Okay, any other stories you want to share just about the normal times before the war kicked off?
And I don't know, maybe Ramadan would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Tell us about Ramadan and being a Muslim in that culture.
During the month of Ramadan, we also tasted the hospitality of the people when we would walk just some minutes before the prayer call, when they would break the fast. And people would call us to their homes, or just next to the streets, there would be food for people just passing by. So yeah, sometimes we would eat like 50 people just next to the streets. The people would stop the cars, the buses, and yeah, just really want people to join them in breaking the fast. Normal food, rice and chicken and maybe falafel and yeah.
Some different salads, but also a sort of paste out of flour with some sauce. And you would always eat by hand and sit on the ground and eat from the same plate. So it's very different than we are used to in Europe.
Men and women separated. Yeah.
Do they have some nice fruit and vegetables out there as well?
Yeah, mangoes and watermelon, bananas.
Okay, good. Tell us something about how everything fell apart and the war started and what happened to you guys.
Yeah, I think we had our first months in the field and we had our first culture shock, and we just came back to excitement after wanting to leave the country. And I think that's also a normal thing. Like, after a couple months, we experienced to be frustrated and we don't understand them and our language is so little and what do we even do here? And we were a little bit disappointed, but after a couple days or weeks, we were just like, no, this is the place where God called us to. And we were just about to have new excitement. And then the crisis started and the war broke out. And first we were like, what's happening? And also at the same time, we were disappointed because we thought we will stay in this country for years. And it seemed to end after a couple months. And also, did we hear God right? Was this the place He wanted us to be? And why only so short? I mean, there is so many people who don't know Jesus yet. And why is it seems to be over after a very short time? And it was. And there were a lot of questions and frustration. And also, of course, fear because the war broke out.
Yeah, I can imagine all those things going through your mind, all those questions, all those doubts. Just before we talk more about that, though, literally what happened? I think you were evacuated, right? So tell us that whole story. How did it go down?
Yeah, there were two military sides who started to fight each other. And yeah, we heard rumors that this might happen, but we didn't thought it will reach the capital.
And also the locals, they thought like, yeah, maybe outside somewhere they would probably fight or something, but it won't be a problem. We're safe in the city.
Yeah, so we as a family, we had the tradition to have a Sabbath and we just had our devotional. I was playing my guitar. We had a worship song and then I stopped playing as I heard something from outside. And I asked Maria, did you hear that? She said, yeah, it might be the neighbors pushing some tables again. And then, okay, I continued playing and I heard again something from outside. And then I stopped. And then it was clear there were gunshots. And I opened the balcony door and yeah, we heard a lot of gunshots. So I turned on my phone and directly got a call from another worker who was checking on me. And when we talked, we realized, okay, it's happening in many places in the city, not just in our area, but also in their area, which were some kilometers away from ours. So in the next minutes, I contacted our teammates and then also the crisis management team. And yeah, we got some instructions staying at home until things are clearer. So I think after the first day, we already realized this is a big thing and we can't just evacuate tomorrow or the same day. So we had a lot of contact with our home country, with our family, with friends, as they've heard about it in the news already. So we really knew, okay, we are in the middle of a big crisis.
Gosh, very scary. So much unknown in that moment.
Yes, and in the end, we stayed 5 days or more just in our house, trying to figure out what's going on. But mainly we still were thinking, yeah, of course, if there is an opportunity to evacuate, we want to evacuate because it started to be scary from day one. Like they were just bombing everything and entering homes and also targeting NGOs and foreigners and stuff. And we knew it's dangerous for us, but also it could be a danger for our neighbors if we are staying with them. And this was also something we didn't want. We didn't want them to be targeted because of us. So we were like, if there is an opportunity to evacuate and also for our son, for the short term and stuff, we wanted to evacuate, but it seems like there was no opportunity to leave this country. And we stayed in our house and God really prepared us with Daniel buying data more than ever in his time in this country. And with us having like enough food and bottled water in the house and internet was always available. We had a solar charger for our phones. So we were somehow prepared and we're fine, like in our house. But of course, it was scary. It's like hearing the airplanes, hearing bombing, hearing gun shooting and stuff, and not knowing if we could leave and when and how. And then it started to be more crazy. And one day on day 6, a bomb just hit our neighbor's house. And for the first time, we were thinking, okay, maybe also in our house, we aren't safe, because we were like, there's no place to go. What should we do? We should stay. But in this moment, this was the first time we were like, okay, maybe we aren't safe. What are we doing now? We don't have a car. There's no options to evacuate. And it was so encouraging to see how people were standing with us during this crisis. People in Europe, we were updating them every day, 3 times a day, asking for their prayer with specific requests. And also they encouraged us. And we realized we really are a team. There's the people on the ground, but there's also the people back in the home countries who are praying and, of course, also supporting, but so mainly the prayer. It makes a huge difference. And these people are so precious and important. And they shared also impressions. And we really felt like God using them to speak to us. And someone had an impression that someone knocked at our door and asked us to come with them to leave our house. And we were like, well, okay. And
Maybe.
wondering who will this be and how and when and how and whatever. And then the next day, our landlord was knocking at our house and they had a car and she was inviting everyone from our house to join them to relocate within the city to another apartment. And we packed our things and went and stayed there for 2 days with them. And this was so precious 2 days. And also for them, again, to take the risk and take us foreigners on the pickup where everyone could see us to a new house and just share everything they have with us and share the house. And going through this together, this was so precious and encouraging. Yeah, just this whole war was so difficult, but also at the same time so encouraging, where we really felt like some of these persecuted people, they shared that they had a lot of peace during crises and suffering. And this is what we felt as well. And we were like, we're going to die. But on the same hand, we were so encouraged to see how God is providing for us. And really this supernatural peace was filling our hearts. And we knew that He is with us till the ends of the earth. Everywhere we go, He's with us and He knows what's going on. There was many challenges, but also many encouragements during these days.
Yeah, we received updates from other organizations as we were connected with each other. And we heard what the military is doing. We've heard the jets flying above our heads each day and night. So in those times, we were frightened, but we made it a priority to pray and worship each morning and each evening before going to bed. And throughout the day, those moments were moments of hope and joy and peace, and no fear was there. And we really felt Jesus is in our midst. And without this, during that time, we always said, oh man, how do the people survive this? Without hope in Jesus, without the faith. And we've heard children screaming, we are going to die. And we could just pray for them that Jesus will encounter them. But for us, there was fear. But then when we prayed and we worshiped God, all fear was gone. So yeah, we really thank God that He was with us there. Yeah.
Yeah, after 8 days, there was opportunities to evacuate, not with the government, but with the convoy to the desert. And everything was unclear. And will we make it to the next city? And what will happen on our way there? But it was the only opportunity. And also for this decision, we really felt peace because already before someone texted us and he was like, I don't want to share something and then in the end we will be disappointed. But I really feel that something will change and something will open for you guys. And this was the day where we were disappointed. There was no running water anymore. And we were like, what do we do? Only the children are now allowed to drink. And we were just thirsty and there was no opportunities for water. But God was also providing after a couple hours. And there we experienced a lot of miracles. And then someone sent this message and we were like, well, it doesn't seem like there is an open door, but we'll see. And then same evening, there was this opportunity to join this convoy. And we really felt like, yeah, this is the way, even if things are uncertain and even if there is a risk. We were encouraged and we knew God is with us, and we made it to the next city, and also we made it out the country. But there was a lot of uncertainties and a lot of difficulties, and still we knew that God is the one who's preparing the way, and there is a way even if it seems like there is no way. And this was so encouraging through all the crisis and on our way out. But even after, we weren't broken. We were tired and our bodies felt like they are falling apart after we reached Europe. But we looked back and we were always thankful and always encouraged how God was with us and making a way for us and encouraging us.
Yeah. Was there no help coming from your embassies at that point?
Yeah, we've heard that they planned secret operations to evacuate, but they couldn't. The airport was destroyed. So we had contact with the embassy. And in the end, they said, stay calm, stay where you are. We try to do everything we can, but we can't help you right now. So in the end, the convoy was faster than the evacuation from our country. So that's why we decided to go with that convoy. But on the same day, they evacuated people from our country, but we were already on their way. But they did everything they could do.
Sure. And so you basically followed this convoy out to another city. And in that other city, was there an airport or something? And then some kind of flights were put on?
There was a port. So we thought about maybe there will be also airplanes leaving from that city. But in the end, it wasn't working. So there was just one way going with a ferry to another country. And yeah, in the end, we did that. And over 1,000 people were with us on that ferry. Yeah, escaping our beloved country.
Yeah. And were there lots of local people on that ferry with you, just trying to escape if they had the finances or the means?
On the ferry were also some locals, but with a second passport. And most of the locals who could flee, they fled either to the northern country or some other neighboring country. Some even fled by foot. We saw many like carrying their stuff and just walking to somewhere with the hope that they would arrive there safely. And others would taking buses to other neighboring countries. But on this ferry, there was mainly foreigners, but on later ferries, there was other locals as well.
And as you were driving along in the convoy out of the city, were you just seeing a lot of damage on buildings and cars and things like that? Or did you find a fairly safe route where there was no fighting happening?
No, especially in the capital, we saw many damaged buildings and cars were burned. And yeah, we saw a lot of military waiting there. And yeah, it was hard to see big buildings, which we knew completely destroyed. And yeah, many destruction, especially in the capital.
But none of the militias or army were trying to stop the convoy, or did they stop and try and get money off people trying to flee?
I think this is what they usually did, but the convoy was very big. I think it was around 2,000 people and 100 cars. So I think then they tried to make image out of it. So we were escorted by the two militaries, first from the one military and then after half of the way from the other military. And they were also filming everything. So I think they really wanted us to leave safely because we were from many different foreign countries and it would be very bad if things would happen with this precious convoy. So that's why we were safe. It was a weird feeling, like the people who were fighting and were responsible for all this disaster and for so many people who lost everything, they were now trying to protect us.
Yeah, it must have been so strange. But I can understand why they would want the foreigners to go out, because whoever won is going to try to form another government and they will want international support and help, so they don't want to cause more problems for themselves by causing harm to the foreigners. So, gosh, yeah, it must have been very scary. How long did the convoy take from your house or the second house where you were staying all the way to the port?
Around 36 hours. It took us triple the time as we were so many people. And if one car would stop, everyone would stop. and it took a lot of time after the break to start again. So it was, 36 hours, and we had like 5 days from evacuating, from starting to reaching Europe without much sleep, just maybe 1 hour per night. A lot of waiting and insecurity. We didn't know like what we will expect. So the one who was organizing it, he said, we hope that everything will go smoothly, but we don't know in the end what they will do. Maybe they will rob you everything. So we also didn't know what to take with us. Of course, we had diapers for our son, but in the end, okay, what about the money we have? And maybe they will rob it. And so we decided, okay, we take half and we leave the other half in our flat because we still had the hope we will return after a while. So it was a hard decision what to leave and what to take with us in a small bag.
Yes, I'm just thinking, I've had young kids, and sometimes even just going on a long car ride in this country with, some kids who are tired in the back, or babies or toddlers. And we grumble and we complain because we think, this is such a long journey. We're stuck in traffic for half an hour now. And this 3-hour journey is now 4 hours, and we grumble. But, oh my goodness, you guys had no idea what was happening in just hours and days and nights. So now back in Europe or wherever you are, you're probably less likely to ever complain about small traffic jams.
Yes, I think so. And also there, how God was just faithful, and also with our son, he did great. During all these troubles and through this crisis, he was always happy. And I feel also when I see him now that really this didn't harm him. And we are very grateful for that. Not only for us feeling like we are encouraged in the end, but also see him who isn't fearful. Still now, he wants to go out and explore, and he likes adventure and stuff. And this didn't harm him or stop him or change his personality. And this is also God's grace.
Yeah, praise God. Yeah, that's really special. Wow, guys, that's a big deal. It's a lot you went through, and it's great to look back and thank God. But in the moment, I'm sure it was pretty terrifying and pretty scary. But I'm so glad that you got out okay, and all those with you. Sounds like it. And of course, you've got local friends. I don't know what contact you still have with locals who they have to live there. I mean, they can't just flee. So how are you processing that? The friends you were making there and the local people, how is that affecting you and your hearts?
So most of my contacts, they made it out. And I only know 1 or 2 who are still in the country. And this is very hard to hear. If they have opportunities to update us, it's very hard to hear that they're still in this crisis and they lost everything. They lost their houses and their everything. And for us, we also lost a lot, but we could return to our home countries and we could return to our families. And this is very painful to hear what they've gone through. Also, to see how much they love their home country. And if there is a chance for them to go back, they really want to go back. And this is also impressive. They are sad and they're hurt and there's a lot of pain and they lost a lot of things. But the love for their home country is bigger. And this is very impressive to me. And they know that it can be risky if they go back. And also for us to ask the questions, are we willing to go back? And is this what God has for us? And are we willing to take the risk to go back?
Thank you for sharing that. It's a really good perspective, especially as our countries are taking refugees. And some people, are more critical and lots of different views around that. But we have to recognize that most people, when they're fleeing real danger and real war, they don't want to come here. This is a desperate last measure. And if they can, they would gladly go back, even to face, a very different city that's been destroyed. They would love to be back and rebuild. It's their land. It's where they feel they belong. And so we definitely need to have some compassion towards those who are fleeing crises, and for those who are stuck and can't go anywhere. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, tell us then about your own future. How did you come to that decision to move back again to East Africa in the future when you can?
Yeah, throughout the last month or years, we still had the passion for this country and for the people groups. So as we were now in the language learning process, we feel, we are ready to go back to East Africa. And for now, we want to go to a neighboring country and work amongst the refugees and especially, pray for this country. And we hope that God will open a way into that country again. And we would love to serve them in their country. And we have joy about going back again. And we thank God for this, because I think it's not always like this if somebody would experience war and maybe get traumatized. But we really want to bring hope and Jesus into that country.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And now, if you are going to be working with the same people as refugees, it's different to if you were just starting, because you've already lived in that country, you've already had to leave that country like they did. And so you have some connecting points, you have some emotional connectivity to their homeland and to the whole story of being forced out. Even if your situation is very different, there's something that you can connect there, and they will appreciate that you've been through that with them.
And this is what we really also experience wherever we meet these people, that there's always a strong connection, because in the end, we left because of the same reason, but maybe not in the same years, but there was always a lot of things going on, and there is always this connection, and we can see that. And hearts are really open when they heard that we lived there and we also had to leave and we really also want to go back. And this is also so encouraging. He is using what we experience for building his kingdom and to make known who he is. And in the end, we are thankful for what we experienced and that he is using us and still wants to use us.
Yes. And the other thing is, when we go through suffering, we can draw closer to other people who've been through similar things, but also there's an opportunity there to draw close to God, to learn something about eternity and about God's heart. Now you've experienced something about how fragile life is and how dangerous life is, and it can give you a new perspective on heaven and eternity. And now you carry that as part of your kingdom message, that actually we never live on this earth the whole time. There's something more, and that's part of your story now, and it's part of your message of who Jesus is and why you have this hope that goes beyond the now and the wealth of Europe or the education, whatever people dream of. There's something more, and that's part of your story and who you are now.
Yeah, I think Jesus is always worth it. And he never says that there will be no problems on the walk with him and no suffering and no pain. And are we willing to take it? And are we willing to say yes, even when there is certain difficulties maybe waiting for us? He wants to use us and he wants us to grow, and he uses these situations to serve the people. And we are thankful for these experiences, and we are thankful for whatever God has prepared for us in the future. And we are willing to say yes, even if some people don't understand it, but in the end, Jesus is worth it.
Yeah, that's powerful. Just to finish, is there something in Scripture, maybe one of the Bible characters or stories, or just some verses that really strengthened you and encouraged you? Or as you look back, you think, that makes more sense of that story now?
Yeah, I just think about Joseph, and I shared a devotional with our son just 2 weeks ago about him. And he had big dreams. He had a calling maybe. And then everything seemed so different, and he maybe asked God on his way to Egypt, why? What is it? Like, is it your plan still? Am I in your will? And then he was in prison, still faithful to God. And we know the end, like God used him so much, and he reconciled with his brothers, and he was a big blessing for Egypt, but also for the whole world at that time. So also for us, like, we had the calling, okay, maybe 10 years, 20 years in that specific country. And now we were like, okay, after 9 months already we are out. Why this? But in the end, God knows it, and he has a plan also for the world and for the unreached people groups, and we can play a tiny part in that, in his kingdom, and work with him. But also God has a big picture, even if we don't see it right now. but trust in him and be faithful on the way, like Joseph.
Amen. Yes, and at the end of that story, there's that great verse, isn't there, that says, what others intended to harm you, God has used for your good and for the saving of many lives. And that's a great prayer, isn't it? We can have that prayer for you guys and your future. Yes, those difficulties came, but you're right. You're dead right. He has his plan. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Man plans his steps, but the Lord determines his course. And it's for our good and his glory eventually. We don't see it in the moment, but he will turn it around. That's our hope. Great, guys. Thank you so much for being with us today. I've loved hearing your story and just what God is doing. And, you guys are very young. You've got a lot of years still to go, God willing, on the field. And I pray that you settle well in more language and then a new team perhaps working with those refugees. But God bless you and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
It was an honor.
Great. All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for being with us today, guys. And as we close, I want to offer you this gift. It's an invitation to come and join in with the mission of God. The Lord asks in Isaiah, who will go? Whom shall we send? Could it be you? Might you be willing to lay it all down, to give up everything for the one who gave up everything for you, to join one of our teams in the Gulf or Africa or Asia, the Balkans or the Caucasus, or to support some of our work through prayer and finances? If your heart is stirred to respond, do reach out to us. You can email me, matt@frontiers.org.uk, or visit our website, frontiers.org.uk. And here's a great quote to end with from David Brainerd. God, help me to make a difference for you that is utterly disproportionate to who I am. God bless, guys, and do join us next time for some more inspirational stories.